Thank you for hanging out to listen to me. I'm sure everyone's anxious to get to the reception. I want to first thank EF and the organizers for having me, and ask how to use this.
Big green button.
Okay. I am a preclinical researcher at the University of Colorado. My primary focus is on the development of drugs for epilepsy, pharmacoresistant epilepsy, and SUDEP. But more importantly for this topic, I have medically and surgically refractory epilepsy, and have since I was 5. Or at least that's when they diagnosed me. Mm-hmm. So I don't have something to talk about as far as a prototype or a EEG detection or diagnosis, but I feel really lucky to have been set up so well by my competitors and also everyone who's discussed what they have thus far in the Trials Conference, because they've done a lot of the work for me. So to get started, I've put a lot of information on the slide about numbers of patients with neurobiological disorders and the economic impact of those worldwide and in the United States, but I'm not going to spend too much time here because it's reiteration of what a lot of folks have already discussed. I think it's important to note, though, because it underscores the importance of accelerating innovation for these patients and looking maybe outside of where we traditionally have been looking. Also, because it's my favorite part of the pipeline, there's a very wide gap in the area of translational research, which I think is a critical step in getting compounds and products from the patients to, or I'm sorry, from initial discovery to the patients. And because I have a soapbox right now, we have what I think is a broken infrastructure on our traditional mechanisms of funding, and we've heard a lot about that here as well. And so we need new sources of funding. And so moving on, what am I going to do about that? What I'm proposing is I'm going to start a new initiative which sources innovation by partnering sponsors with patients and innovators. What we do is give patients a venue where they can direct medical research objectives by proposing how they would like to see the funding spent, and then we crowdsource those ideas. So patients bring us proposals of challenges that they would like to see us incentivize, and essentially it's an open platform, an open format. They aren't given surveys of what we think they might like to have us do, instead to fill that gap that exists between patients and researchers. You know, those of us like me who spend a time conducting animal research in the basement. They fill out the application, they say, this is what we need. This is what is important to us as far as outcomes. And this is what will get it done for us. And this is what we'd like to see, but if you don't get there, we're okay with that. And unconventional ideas, as well as conventional ideas, are explored. Controlling the seizures is ideal. Detecting the seizures, preventing the seizures, that is what's going to help patients. However, when you ask the patients, they're really interested in some other things as well. And we'd like to fund those things. So what we are interested in doing is bringing the science and the innovation, which may exist in academia. We are aligned, as are the patient ideas, with a lot of the things I've heard at this conference, up to the speed of where the patient's lives sit, and whether it be an app or device or biomarker, services, anything that helps make life work for the patients. Those are the kind of things we're looking for. Why does this work as a funding mechanism? The Lancet has an article that talks about how 85% of the funding that goes towards medical research is wasted because we're asking the wrong questions. So what we're proposing is, why don't we ask the patients what they want? Maybe that'll reduce the time products are spent in the pipeline, and maybe that may reduce the cost. I'm selling me to you. I'm a neuroscientist living with epilepsy. I think if I partner with an advisory board and business advisors, that between the scientist and the business advisors and myself, we'll be in a good position to put the investments where they need to be so that stakeholders and patients, caregivers get what they need at the end of the day. As far as outcomes are concerned, the outcomes that the patients identify. We're very excited about the fact that the innovations are going to come out from outside of the scientific bubble that I've been confined to until right now. That we're going to see innovators from outside of academia that could be the aspiring student or retired engineer, whomever may have the best solution. They're going to get the money. And we think this will produce new products that we hadn't previously thought of. So this is a big proposal. How does it work? The patients are going to bring their ideas to a secure platform. Password entry would be required, and submit proposals that are relatively simple, but will have strict criteria, what we need. And we're going to encourage them which directions to go in. Patients are smart. Families are smart, and they're motivated, and you'd be surprised, a lot of them are on the same playing field as you and think about things like registries. They think about things like databases and orphan drugs, and they want the feedback from you of what's going on in the encephalopathies and those drugs that are going straight to the providers. So once we vet those ideas, because they're going to have to be looked at by that scientific advisory panel, then the portal will also, this platform will also manage review, so reviewers will have access, and then submission by all of the potential solvers. And that would be at each stage. So a price challenge could be an ideation level, or a theoretical prize, or proof of concept. And solvers may solve each of those or any one of those levels. And the platform can be entered securely, and all those things will be managed via the web, which we like because there's no geographical boundaries. And it allows for people with disabilities, like those with epilepsy, to have employment and not have to worry about getting in the car and driving, to where they're helping potentially this endeavor. So web developers, accountants, the list goes on of potential employment that could be sourced through a web-based business. And just so you can see the flow of data, the caregivers have the opportunity to submit their idea, and it goes again through the advisory boards, and every challenge that makes it to the forum will have been based on the skeleton of a patient idea. Then we engage solvers from communities that we believe have skills to solve that idea. We're hoping we'll find folks inside our community and outside the community. And there will be large awards, provided we have the support, but they will only be awarded if all the criteria in the challenge are met. And there's a lot of legal involved, so there'll be challenge-specific rules outlined at that point before, at the onset of the challenge. As soon as someone logs in and agrees to be a solver, they'll agree to whatever for that specific challenge, and that sponsor of that challenge has set as a guideline and a rule. And those could include IP, licensure, whether the organization is going to seek to collaborate afterwards with, and we think this allows for opportunity, especially a stage investment model, for investors to see products become more focused as they progress down the pipeline. And it's a lower risk, relatively little risk goes into betting on all the horses that come in as solvers.
So Heidi, I just want to tell you that if you want to get any questions from these guys,
Yeah, I should talk to you?
Well, you got to wrap up soon.
Okay, well, I think that this is just engagement on the site. It only went up at the end of March. So for 3.5 weeks, which is when I got this, we're over 100, which was when I was told by the rather harsh business guys, if anybody cared, you better be there. And this is my timeline. So we have two very generous neurologists at the University of Colorado and Baylor University that are handing out patient flyers, so we can look at number of patients that actually come to the site and are submitting relative to number of flyers that are handed out. And we are in the process of building our prototype website that with the computer science department at the University of Colorado, and also simultaneously with the web developer Galvanize in Boulder, and both will be tested in the neuroscience and engineering communities at the university to look at content and usability and get feedback from those folks on whether it's what they would like to see changed. And so we could go through some iterations before we then plan to launch by the end of 2018 at the annual neuroscience community meetings, SFN and American Epilepsy Society. And then I need to thank Elise Goldman from Baylor University for being willing to take this on, and Lauren Frey, because they thought this had legs and were willing to pass out my brochures to patients. But also Laura Strom and Amy Brooks-Kyle, because they would send out emails to the neuroscience, or the neurologists, both pediatric and adult at Colorado, to say, why aren't we helping her? We need to be doing more of this. And I've been very lucky just because I called them and I said, you guys know you need this. You know that NIH is interested in this and FDA is interested in this. That Dr. Sandeep Patel, Director of Open Innovation, has spent time on the phone talking to me and giving me advice on how to do this, and then directed me to Dr. Alex Fair, who is the CEO at MedStarter, and is particularly interested, especially if you are.
Okay, so let's open it up for some questions.
Is the site designed to manage the proposals, or is it designed for donations, or both?
It'll be both. So the funding mechanism hopefully will be synced so that we could be funding it with sponsors, so that if a nonprofit wanted to harness this, they could come in and sponsor a prize challenge, or a industry partner saw that if they were to seek diversity in solving issues for their company, they could come through and do it that way through patient input. I've heard a number of companies who have been looking for that sort of data. We aim to not compete, but to complement some of these initiatives that are already out there. And I think if the patient data is what really makes us unique, and we would be willing to share that with like-minded nonprofits. And if the portal was such that people could come in and it was a nonprofit, I'm not quite there yet, but then you could get tax-deductible donations coming in, as well as a funding. I have to be able to maintain it with like a fee-based structure for the prize challenges for the industry folks.
So would it just be patients who could enter unmet needs, or caregivers, or nurses, or anyone else who recognized that there was a need here to have something?
I think any of those are viable options that have their eyes on things that those of us who are in the research community maybe don't.
Okay. And then my second question was, I know you tapped into that there would be some patent. I know sometimes it gets a little tricky of whose idea was it really, and if it was the patient's idea for the solution, would the patient be able to share in that patent? You may not have thought through that,
Right.
but I'm curious.
Right. I've kind of taken my guidance, especially because I'm so early on and I haven't, hired I don't have a lawyer or anything like that, but from how because crowdsourcing isn't new. What's new about this is the patient-driven crowdsourcing. And I've looked at some crowdsourcing forums want to keep IP. Others want to keep the license. And I couldn't get I just called them and asked, and I couldn't get a straight answer as to why. And the way I view it is, depending on what the challenge was and who you're working with. So if company X comes in, there may be there's always going to be different interests. I think we'd have to establish a very, for the patients, that from my perspective, they would be giving their ideas not knowing whether they'd ever make it to the platform. Because those ideas are going to be vetted by a number of people before. And the best ones off the pile, for whatever reason, because they're going to provide the most value to the clinic, to the patient, to the stockholder, will be the ones that are going to, our stakeholder, I guess, be the ones that get there. So I don't know if the idea is that and part of the testing is how much guidance the patients are going to need, and there may need to be a two-directional, such that the patients come to us with an idea, and then we'll build the challenge how we see it is best to motivate solvers, and then we will have to send that challenge back to that original patient and say, does this fit your need? Because otherwise, the transparency isn't there.
Unfortunately, in the interest of time, we have to move on.